Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to complete the category view for the TechPub player. We've already generated and created the top components here with a couple of image views and a text view within the relative layout which surrounds everything here. So the relative layout kind of goes around everything. The next components that we're going to build are the details separator, the details themselves, the episode separator, and the list itself, which houses a view for each category row. So we're going to build all those at this point in time. First one we're going to deal with right now is the details. Alright, so now we're going to go back to Eclipse. And here in Eclipse, I've already started the basic text view here. I have a ID for it called separator text. There's no layout width or height I've declared, and I have some just basic filler text here called my category. And this filler text will allow me to just see some stuff on the screen. So let's go layout height. I'm going to want it to wrap content. I don't want it to go. I don't want it to take up an entire screen like this. I want it to pretty much just be a certain width like that and a certain height. So what I'll go ahead and do is, in the width though, do something a little bit different. We want this to be a fill content. So say fill parent. And what it's going to do is fill the parent, and what that means is we're not going to allow anything next to it. If we go back and look at the layout, let's see, we have my category, so it's still off in the wrong area. Let's go back to video main. What we need to do is we need to set it below something. So let's go ahead and begin to write that code. Alright, we're going to set it below the header image, which is up top. If we scroll up, we see that we have the header image, and we just say, hey, I just wanted to make sure that we drop it below the header image. So Android layout underscore control space. Alright, it gives me the IntelliSense layout below. I'm going to set it below a particular ID, and that's the header image. Let's go back to the layout, and there, now our category looks like this. The screenshot though, we see that the screenshot shows that we have kind of like a gray background with some padding around it. It's white bold text, so we're not there yet. Let's just make a little bit, let's do something a little bit different. We see that we have a little bit of space here, so we're going to go ahead and add some padding here to that. So let's go ahead and do that. And so it's not going to be padding that we want to do here, it's going to be a margin actually. So I want to do a margin on the top. It's going to be layout margin, and I can say top right here, and then let's just say I want 15 device density pixels. I go back, and we'll now see that my category is now dropped below this. Now we also know that in our image here we have some space around the edges here. So what we need to do is kind of figure out how we're going to do that. So that's going to actually be padding. So if we go over here, back to Eclipse, go back to the video, let's put some padding here, and we want to just do maybe 5 pixels of padding. And now we see we have a little bit of space. Now the only thing we're missing now is a background. So let's set the background of this. Oops. So let's set Android background. And now what we can do is we can set a color here, or we can set an image. So I'm actually set a color, and I've defined a color already. So inside of color, I'll go inside of here, and in colors I have a category BG color, TechPub, separator BG color. There we go, that's what I'm looking for. Separator BG color. So I have that. And let's type that in here. We're going to see a separator BG color. And then what we want to have here also is the color of the text, which is going to be text color, and this is stored inside of a color as well. So color slash separator text color. If we go back to colors, we'll see that that color is actually a white color. When we come back here, I hit save, and we go back and look at the layout. Now we can see that my category almost looks the same. And on our screenshot here, we actually have a little bit of padding here, and we can choose to leave it there or take it away. But what gives us this little bit of padding on the sides is a padding around the entire relative layout. We can say padding, like 6 pixels or 5 pixels, and it'll give us this little bit of padding. So we can do that as well. We're also missing the bold here for the details. So let's head back, and we want to say that the Android text style is bold. And there we go. Now we have my category. Now it's in bold. It's exactly what we wanted. Now if we want to get that little bit of padding around the entire screen to give us a little bit of extra room, we can do that, or we can, you know, leave it how it is. It's kind of up to you. Let's go ahead and add it in just to see how to do it. So to add some padding around everything, let's go all the way to the top to the relative layout. And now to the relative layout, we're going to add some padding. And we're going to say 5 pixels. Go to the layout, and there we go. Now we have a little bit of space on the side here and over here, so you see that little bit of space. And now as each new thing gets added, there's going to be a little bit of space all the way around the entire relative layout itself. The next piece that we want to tackle is this text view here that's going to house all of our information for the text view, and then in regards to the details for the category we're looking at. So let's come down here and let's set up another text view, and let's set up its ID. Going to kind of stub it out right now, and we'll kind of grab these two. They're going to be most likely be the same for the width and the height, so we're just going to copy those over. Again, we want the layout height to kind of wrap content, so as the content goes in there, let's wrap that, and let's close it off so we don't have any more errors. And then we want to add in some text. Let's just put some kind of lorem ipsum Greek text stuff in there, just so we can see what we're working with on the screen. And then we want to give it the ID of details line. Come down here, we'll hit save. If we come back and take a look at it, we'll see that we have an error here, and it's because we got the ID wrong. So we're going to be at plus ID slash, there we go. Go back to layout, and we see up top, there it is again, we're way up too high, so we need to set it below something. So let's go to these layout parameters, Android layout underscore layout. Let's say we want to go below something, and we want to go below, if we look at the layout again, we want to go below my category, so we want to put it below. So let's find that ID, which is separator text. We can either copy it, or we can hit control space and go down to at plus ID. And we'll go to separator text. There we go. And if we go back to layout, we'll now see that we have lorem ipsum Greek text. But we can go back to the screen here, and we see that we have actually a little bit of space here. And if you notice, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a little bit of space right here. There's a little bit of padding on both sides, so there's actually a little bit of padding all the way around to kind of give it this indented type of feel, to say that, you know, this is some text that's inside of this little detail area. So we need to kind of give this padding, and we can do that pretty easily. Let's go back into our view here, and we'll say Android. Let's add some padding to it, and we'll say 5 density pixels, layout, and there we go. Now we have some stuff in here. Now as our text grows, this will actually grow larger because we have the height set to wrap content. The width will always be fill parent, so everything will always stay at that as wide as the parent is. So if we rotate the phone, which we can do right now inside of here, we'll go to Lowe's Landscape Close. You see how this control here, this view, stayed as wide as it could, so it went to the entire parent. So if we were to do it again, it'd be from within its parent, it went as wide as it could be. Now for the height, it's only taking up what it needs, so it's wrapping the content. Again, as the content gets larger, this box will end up growing to fill that content because we have wrap content set to true. So if we go back to portrait, go to video main. So I may not use the designer for dragging controls on and get everything laid out how I'd like to, but I do use the layout designer to view how it's going to look on the screen when I'm not generating content on the fly. If this is going to be a static page where I'm just replacing values and setting values, I'll just throw some Greek text in there, such as my application, my category, lorem ipsum, all that kind of stuff, just to see what it's going to look like. And we'll go back to here. So the next piece is episodes. Now episodes has the same exact style as this, as details. So what we're going to want to do here is pretty much just go up and copy this. So we can come up here and copy this. Now these kind of things can be put into something called styles for Android. And we can just say that here's the kind of style that I would like this text view to have, and it could have all the margins and paddings and backgrounds and stuff, but we're not going to get into that just yet. So we're just going to go ahead and take the easy route here and copy it over. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to call this the list separator. It's going to separate the list. So now we can add the video category details separator. That'll give it some text. And if we look at this, it looks like we don't see it here. We just see details, which is the text we filled in. But the thing is since we copied that code over, there's actually two of these things stacked on top of each other. You just can't see it. So there's more along the lines of, it's kind of something like this, where they're stacked on top of each other, and we can't see the red one right now, but we can see this blue one. So we just need to kind of move the details one underneath. So let's change it so we're from the layout below header image, let's lay it out below the details line. So I'm just going to copy the ID and go layout below the detail line. So we could accomplish the same type of thing with the relative layout, a linear layout, but we'll do it here with the this layout. So now we're kind of getting to where we want to go. But I'm noticing an error already in what we're doing because we have my category and details. If we look at the screenshot, it should say details and episodes. So it looks like they just got some text switched up. Since we're using resources, this is really easy. So I'm just going to copy this resource here, which is a string resource. Again, strings come from the strings file, which are located in your resource directory. And there's a string resource called video category details separator. I open up the strings XML, and here it is, video category details separator, and its value is details. The other one that we're looking for is the episodes one, so that should be the one that we just added. That one's called episode header separator. So let's go ahead and switch these around. Let's go back up to video main. I'm just going to copy this here. I'm going to scroll up to the other separator, which is the top one here, and where I had my category. So remember, let's go to layout. You see my category. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to change this to @string, and we'll say video category details separator. If I go back, you should see two details now, which we do. We see details up here and we see details down here. Go back to video main. We scroll back down, and we need to change this one to episodes. So this one is going to be episode header separator. If we go back to the strings, we'll see something called episode header separator. Here we go, episode header separator. Now I'm in my strings file here, and I can edit these strings file with the built-in XML editor here by clicking on resources right down the bottom corner. Or what I can do is I can select the add button and add it for me. Or I can click on each one and I can edit it down the line. Now this is nice and all, and it makes adding resources pretty easy. But once you get deep into your app, and if you have a large application with messages and pop-ups and dialogues and menus and all kinds of stuff that we will have, this is going to get a little unwieldy. So what I like to do is inside the XML, I like to kind of just get some comments here, just kind of state what they are. So say this is a general XML for app, and then this one is just some looks like it's category page related. And so as I keep going down here, I'll have ones for maybe help menus, and then I might have one for error dialogues, and depending upon what errors happen, I can come here to check on these error dialogues. I can separate them each out, and I'll just get rid of general XML and just say general app strings. Now productions was on a previous page, and we could set that up on the page itself, but we'll do that a little bit later when we hop back to that page. So video main again had episode header separator. Let's go back to layout, and now we're going to see details, the text, and episodes. Come back to our string here, and then what we're going to see is we need to add this last little piece. So this is a list view, and then the interesting part is each one of these little list view items actually are their own view, just replicated over and over like through a loop. So we have the same view replicated over and over and over. Now previously we had talked about a tool called the hierarchy viewer. So everything inside of here has a hierarchy. For example, we have a relative layout that's managing everything inside of there. We have first image view would go here, second image view would go here, and then the third item is the text view, and you can kind of get the picture. We have just all kinds of views all over the place, and sometimes it gets difficult to see how these views are interacting. So what you can do is you can go into your SDK folder. I put mine in C SDK, and then I have Android, and then I can go into tools, and inside of your tools folder you have something called hierarchy viewer.bat. If you open a command prompt to here, you can just start hierarchy viewer, as I've done here. So hierarchy viewer is already running. And once hierarchy viewer is running, you can click load view hierarchy, and that's right here. Now you have to give it a second because it actually has to go reflect all the types inside of the XML. And another thing to note is you have to have your emulator running at the time, because what this will do is connect to the current emulator. So this is connecting to the current emulator, and it's looking at this page right here. And when I hit load view hierarchy, it reflects into the running emulator or device and sees what the current frame layouts and absolute layouts and relative layouts that are present on the screen is, and draws this little picture for us. I'm rolling the mouse wheel forward to kind of zoom in. And so what we have is we have a phone, expand it here, we have a phone window, and inside of that is a linear layout, and then we have frame layout. So this is all just Android stuff until we get into relative layout. If we look in the right hand corner down here, we can see this is our view just kind of separated out and highlighted into outlines. So that's the relative layout we've been working with. Inside of there we have what you can see here is the list separator, and here's the icon. So there's those two IDs. So that's what we're working with now. We can scroll over here and we can see a couple more text views, like the details line. We can see the separator text, the header image, the label we're working with. So we can kind of start seeing how Android is visualizing all these items. And then inside of there we have a list view. Now inside of each list view we have another view that helps us define what we want each row to look like. And inside of each row we have a relative layout. And we'll get to that in a second and then go through that. But this tool helps you identify how everything's working, and you can also start playing with different options inside of here. And you can spend quite a bit of time optimizing your layout. And it's very important to understand this tool because it'll help you fix layout problems down the future. You can go to the Android Developer Center inside of Dev Guide tab, down under the developing heading, under tools, and go to hierarchy viewer, and it'll give you all kinds of information such as overlay, refresh rate, zoom, all kinds of good stuff in here about how you can look at pixel perfect views by zooming in. If we change the view of something, we can look at how everything's laid out. You can see the hierarchy view, or you can export files to PSDs. You can do all kinds of different stuff to look at these things in runtime environments. So what we have to do before we can even see this type of list that we have already running in the emulator, which has already been built and ran before, we need to create the list here. So as a note of why you're seeing it in hierarchy viewer but you're not seeing it here is because I've already built this app before and I'm just walking through the process of it again, and it's already running in the emulator right now, and we're just kind of rebuilding it through the episode itself here. So let's go back to video main. Alright, so what we need to do now is add a list. So we can say list view. I'm going to give it an ID so I can work with it within the code. I'm just going to call it list. Now there's a little bit difference here for the layout and height. I'm just going to copy this. I want it to both fill the parent. So what this means is down at the bottom I have all this extra room, and depending upon how many episodes, I could have 0 or I could have 20 or 30 episodes. I want it to fill up the entire contents of this, and I just want it to use up whatever is available here, left and right, just fill up everything that I have. So as my contents grow, as maybe episodes are released, it can just kind of grow, and a scroll bar, etc. should appear, and we'll be good to go. So a list view, we're going to call it ID list, fill the parent, and we can just close it out. Now if you're paying attention, you're probably guessing you're already seeing a problem, and you're correct. You click it here, we don't see the Android list at all because there's no data to see. So it's one problem that we have with the designer, but there's nothing we can do to really get around that. But one thing to mention is if we were to fire this up and run this right now, we would not see anything inside of here that would show the list in appropriate position. The list would actually end up being all the way at the top. So you just see a list of just items overlaid everything else. Again, because we're in a relative layout, we need to tell it where we want it to go. So what we have to do is we have to say that we want it to lay out below something else. And we would like to lay out below the list separator. So we'll just say I want to lay out below you. We'll give you the ID, and then we'll see it inside of here. We'll say it layout. And that's all we have to do to define the list. So the next question you probably have is, what about these areas here? What about these views? How do we define these views? You know, what do we do? What about this little separator thing here? Do I have to worry about that? And the answer is no, you don't have to worry about the separator, but you do have to worry about the contents of how your view is laid out here. So you may want a picture in it like we had on the previous episode, or you may just want some text to say here's the introduction and the title, and here's maybe some title of the video and some information about the video itself. And then when they click on this item, perhaps they'll be taken to another screen, which gives them the full information, gives them the option to play it if they have it downloaded, or gives them the option to download it, which at that time it will start downloading. So let's take a look at what it takes to build this. Now behind the scenes, what we've actually built is the code for this already, and you can see the red X up here letting us know there's an error. We'll get into the code in the future, but this code is very similar to the previous episode, where we go get some data from the mock repository, we get the category, and then from there we go inside of each one of the videos and we start populating the list with the video information. But to do that, we need a view that we would like to tell Android, hey, here's the view I want you to use when I'm populating it. Android out of the box does provide basic list views, and how you can find those is by going to the Android developer reference, so developer.android.com. Then you can hit the reference tab, and the left hand side select Android, and then scroll down here. If you see, we're kind of scroll down a little bit, go to r.layout. And so those are built-in resources we can use. And so there's a couple of them here, such as simple list item 1, simple list item 2, list item checked, and there's a couple other items in here. These are very basic, where they have just basic text in them, maybe a larger font. You really don't have a lot of control over what you want them to look like. But some of the items in here will work. If you don't need them to do anything else, then you can just leave them with that. However, we need more of a customized situation. And the reason we need that is because sometimes this text is going to be really long, sometimes it's going to be short, maybe it might even be empty. So I do not want a row that looks like this, and then the next row to look like this, and then the next row to maybe be really thin, and then this next row will be kind of the same size but a little bit bigger, and this. And as you can see, like, I don't want a screen, and this would be all the videos. I don't want a screen to look like that. I want a screen to be uniform and have a uniform feeling to it. So what we can do here is, while I'm loading the view up, I could say, well, the first line of text is the title of the video, introduction, and the second line is the description. And then in the settings for the view, I can say you're only going to be one line long, and then if the text happens to overflow how big you are, then I just want you to put an ellipse at the end to let a user know, hey, there's actually some more stuff here, and click on it to find out what it is. And we can do that pretty easily. But before we can populate the list, we have to create another view to inflate from. So before we created a layout inflator from the activity. Now layout inflator allows us to take an XML file and create that into a view object. Now we've created need to create one called video row. Again, this code's already been written, so let's go create a video row. We're just going to hop back into the XML again. I'm going to use the XML wizard here, and it's going to be a layout video row.xml, and inside of here we're going to use a relative layout as the root layout. Video row, save it inside of there, and now we have video row. Now we don't have anything inside of this video row. Let's go back to the XML view. I'm going to minimize our toolbar here. So what we need to do is we need to put a couple of text views in here. So let's go ahead and put a text view, and I know that the Android ID, I'm going to need Android layout width, of course. Again, ID is not required, but I need the ID here because I want to be able to define and work with it inside of Java. I'm going to say layout height is fill parent. Now the reason why I'm doing fill parent for the width is because I want it to go all the way across, actually, and the height should actually be wrap content. So it's going to be wrap content, and now we need an ID for it, and I'm just going to say @+ID label. Now it's not absolutely required since we're using a relative layout. The title could be a little bit longer, and I don't really want to cut off the title now that we think about it, because we could have a long title here, and this could be learning source control with Git and Mercurial and SourceGear. It could be the title for some reason, and I don't want to be a ... on that. I would like to actually see the entire title, so I could take this back and say wrap content. So let's fix that. And then from here, we need another text view. So hit text view. And we'll say we're going to wrap the content again. Let's go back here. And we'll take an ID. Android ID. Let's close this off. And let's give it an ID. It's called video description. Save. There we go. Now we've actually filled out all of our requirements for the view. Now the only thing is we need to make sure that each one of these views has bold text here that's white and kind of like some gray text here a little bit lower that's not white and has some ellipsis. So let's go ahead and get that styled up. So we know this is going to be bold, so let's say Android. Let's put some text in here so we can actually see what we're working with. So let's put foo, or put, a nice little title. I am foo. And on the bottom one, let's put some text so we can see what it looks like. Let's put a lot of text down here. And I'm just going to kind of just type a bunch of stuff in here. Just because we want it nice and long, we don't have to overflow. Let's go look at the layout. Oh, it looks like everything is overlaying itself. Let's go back to portrait here. You see everything's overlaying itself. We have things overlaying. So we realize that this needs to be below that because we're using a relative layout. Oh, it looks like we just encountered a error with Java. So what we're going to do now is we are going to close down Eclipse and then restart Eclipse. As for why this error happens, I am not sure, but something happened within Eclipse that it needs to close, and Eclipse just closed down. So let's start it back up. Okay, so now we have Eclipse started back up. Let's expand TechPub again. There we go. Go back into our layouts. We're working inside of there. Our source. Okay, now we're going to put some. I want to do maybe a text color. Now the color here, we're going to go back to our colors directory. Let's go back to the values and go to colors.xml, and we define a couple of extra colors in here. So we have the video name color, so that's going to be all white. So let's use that video name color. Scroll to the bottom here, color, video name color. There we go, great. And actually, let's copy this up to the top because the item down here, this is actually the description and this is the video name, so this needs to be removed. So let's get rid of that. Okay, and we don't have a color here. We're going to use a default color, and we have the text, and then we're going to say Android. We're going to say single line. And so the reason why I know which option to choose so quickly is I've spent a lot of time in developing Android apps poking around inside of the SDK to see what was there. There's not any really hard, fast rules to learn it all, other than just going Android : and then in control space on the view you're working with, and then you can kind of see what you got to work with. So you got color hints, appearances, scales, typefaces, text styles, cursors are visible, max lines, max height, single line, all kinds of stuff, autocomplete, capitalize. So we're just going to go here, and I know we have one called single line. Continue. So what we're going to do is we'll add in the single line. And what we'll do is we'll say true. So it says that this is going to be a single line object. And before we can display it below the text view above, we need to say Android layout below. And we'll get the ID of the label at plus ID label. So this points up to this label up here, so we want it to go below this label. If we go back to the here we go. Now we see I am foo, and we see these other options here. If we go back to portrait, we'll see now that our text, when in landscape, it fits within the screen here. So we have all of our text that we typed in works. And if I come back to landscape, whoops, wrong button. And if I come back to landscape portrait, landscape close, this is what it looks like. Otherwise, we can go to portrait, and then immediately what happens is the text that was on there, anything that overflows that line will now get an ellipse at the end. So let's hop back over. And then what we can say here to make sure that we're always going to get an ellipse, So we can say that we want the ellipse to be somewhere located, always at the end. So we don't want the ellipse ever to occur anywhere else. We don't want to scroll. We don't want to do nothing. Just ellipse it at the end, and that will give us what we have here. Now we do have one issue still, is that source control is supposed to be bold, organization is supposed to be bold, so the title itself needs to be bold. So let's go back up. Android text style equals bold. If we look at the layout again, there we go. Now we can say I am Fu and the text description. So now here we have the view built up, but when we start stacking these things up, what's going to happen is it's a very small view. It's literally only that big. So the next row is going to be right on top of it, and right on top of it, and right on top of it. What I'd like to do is have a little bit of space in between each one of these lines. So actually a little bit of space here. So kind of some space up top and a space on the bottom, and possibly on the sides as well, to kind of free it up a little bit. And if we look at the screenshot, that's exactly what we do. We have some extra space on the sides here that's really small, but you can see it. Space down here, and there's space up here. So let's add that space in. It's just going to be some padding back here, and let's go back to the parent view. Say Android. So we're going to go back up to the relative layout and say, you know what, give everything inside of here a padding of 5. And there we go. Now we get a little bit of padding. So we click that, you can see that there is that level of padding here. There's some on this side, there's some on this side, and there's some on this side. And as it starts looping through, it will create the video row the way we would expect it to see it. So this is all that we have to do to create our video row. If you wanted to throw some other stuff in here, we could throw a couple other items in here, such as images. You could throw buttons in here, and then you can kind of turn them on or off depending upon the code. And so there's all kinds of different options when you start creating your own custom some list rows. In the next episode, what we're going to cover is binding the data to this view that we just created. So we're going to take the data for the category, grab all of its videos, and we're going to take all those videos and bind them to the list view and have them all populate. And then what we're actually do is we'll pull the list view, and we'll have each item create a new view and pull out the label and video description, and we'll populate it onto the screen, resulting in something that looks very similar to this right here.